something about making dishes, and that if you've ever worked kind of in the service industry or the food industry, and that overwhelming feeling of a rush and then kind of like getting into a flow and getting through it, you're like, yeah, no, okay, just I gotta do what I gotta do.
Hello and welcome. My name's J.E. and with me today is my good old friend, Alexander Gonzalez.
Hello.
And please remember that we are not game devs. How are you doing today, Alex?
I'm doing all right, Jay. How about you?
I'm doing fine, man. It's hot. It must be unbearable where you are.
So, like, straight up, I have to have a fan pointed at me. I settled into the podcast. I'm so sorry, guys. I settled into the podcast, and me sitting, not talking, just sitting, I started to sweat. Like the folds in my body started to moisten, and I was like, I can't do it. I have to, like, at least get some kind of air circulation. TMI, sorry.
But those are not the
heat
waves that we are talking about today. Today,
we're
here
say
creating
folds.
Something. You say what?
I thought you were gonna say folds.
Oh, I was gonna say something about sweat, but I didn't want to get into it. Every week, we on our Game Devs will create a new, exciting video game idea that we have always wanted to play, but not have any knowledge or know-how to create the wonderful experience that are video games. Today is my turn to present We Are Not Game Devs' 100-second IP. Let's begin with a basic concept. Think high fantasy, but not really. I guess think medieval.
So
ages.
Medium fantasy?
No, like real life medieval ages. There's castles, kings, the whole works, right?
We've done this before.
Yes, we have. But in this universe, there
is
a guild of quote unquote heroes as far as the villagers are aware of. Think I just mentioned to you, I'm starting to start The Witcher, and you know how in The Witcher, all the townsfolk are afraid to go outside their city walls because all the monsters, and then there's a group of people called the Witchers that go around hunting monsters for them, right?
Yeah.
That's the same idea here, where all the villagers that live in this land that I say is some fantastical version of medieval Europe, but they're all terrified to leave their cities because of these monsters that are outside. So there's a guild of people that go out and hunt these monsters. The thing is, there are no monsters. There's no goblins, trolls, dragons, whatnot. This guild is a guild of liars that have built a career. They banded together and they all have a understanding that, hey, monsters don't exist, but we need to make a living. And so they continuously lie about their exploits, about fighting these giant monsters and these things that they have names for, descriptions for, and they come back. But all they're trying to do is get hired to kill monsters that don't exist. And you are part of this Liars Guild. What do you think?
I see a lot of parallels to Monsters, Inc., and I like it.
To Monsters, Inc.
Think about it. They're harnessing a village's fear to live.
Sure, but the monsters are real.
And they're using it. But are they really monsters?
No, I guess that's what they're trying to say in the movie.
All right. So, I always approach these wild ideas from a gameplay perspective. Are we like cutting heads off chickens and like sewing are we trying to make? Is it going to be like Scooby-Doo, like where we play the role of the villain?
So I don't know exactly how the gameplay works, but I don't think that there's going to be combat. So you're not killing things in this game. What's happening, I'm assuming.
Ooh, maybe decisions, like you're playing like a role-playing game, and you have to make various decisions on how you want to scare the villagers, and maybe the game just plays it out.
I guess there's two ways we could go about this. There's one route where maybe. So you're part of this guild of liars, right? Guild of, we'll just call them the Liars Guild for the purpose of making it easier on ourselves. But you're part of the Liars Guild, and I'm assuming the gameplay would be you kind of traversing this, I wouldn't say open world, but pretty open map and you go from town to town finding work to bring into the guild to like help everyone out, right? And
All right.
there's two ways I was thinking that this could go. Is one,
but you've drawn me inspiration here.
Okay.
What if the first part is the first phase where you have to sell your guild to the town?
Interesting.
And you do that through like maybe a persuasion conversation tree.
So I have a similar idea. So the idea is the entirety of this universe, the Liars Guild is a known quantity. Like everyone knows about the Liars Guild, and because everyone thinks that these monsters are real, right? So they've heard of the Liars Guild before because they were the ones kind of spreading the lies. So instead of trying to persuade them that the Liars Guild is real, I think you go to each town and then you have to set up a fake monster to get hired for. You know what I'm saying? So like you would stage a monster attack, and then you could maybe in the beginning you could only make it simple things like, oh, you guys, looks like you guys have like a goblin issue, and then you'd have to go around maybe like stealing small knickknacks from people's homes and stuff, and be like, you walk in town, people have been stealing our shit. Who's doing it? And be like, oh, I know what this is. This is a problem with goblins that you have here. And you'll start at low level stuff, but then as soon as you level up in this game, when you get to other towns, you're like, oh, you guys have a big problem. There's a dragon somewhere near your village.
Maybe we'll make it so that there's a stealth component when needed where you can steal things from people's houses and also break into places of key interest, while also having a gathering component where you gather different materials to either create your monster or create the illusion that your monster was there.
Yeah, I think it's more the latter, where it's like you're trying to create the illusion that something has been making a ruckus.
When I meant create your monster, I meant like either a rough suit or, scales that maybe you could fly over line or stuff of that nature, or cast shadows.
Yeah, and maybe how it kind of works is as you bring in more money to your guild, so you're taking the money that you earn from these missions back to the guild, and maybe the guild will be like, okay, I think you're ready for the next step, and they'll teach you about another monster or another set of monsters that you could use in your repertoire, and maybe they have like, so we have these fake dragon scales, you need this element, this thing, and this thing to craft these fake dragon scales to like kind of scatter about, you know what I mean? Or like, so I'm assuming now that we're talking it out, this is kind of going towards like a hunter-gatherer style gameplay where you're looking for materials and then using them to craft things, and you could place them in certain places to try and convince the local village that they have a monster issue that they'll hire you for.
And did you want to make it where maybe the actual presentation of the monster and how you craft it is maybe 75% of the overall like meter in convincing the village, and maybe 25% is your speech afterwards, or how you explain it to them and the different choices you use? Do you want it to be open in that way? Like, is that your vision, to see it where you could maybe approach it from different angles, or do you just want it to be linear?
I want it to be pretty open. I want it more like you get to choose what the monster is, and depending on what monster you choose to try and convince the village, the higher or lower your pay rate will be. So like a goblin or a small army of goblin isn't going to be worth as much as killing a dragon. You know what I mean? And so you get to choose what job you're trying to manufacture. Maybe there could also be an aspect where people in the village already, you could like listen in the village and talk to villagers. And what if they're like, oh, kids have been going missing lately, and they don't know why, but maybe you could use that in your repertoire of monsters. Be like, oh, we have stories that I can't think of any monsters right now. Like a troll takes kids. So you know what I mean?
It would make it Yeah, that it would give you a bonus.
Yeah, and
I
that
see
will
where you're
add
going
up
with it.
to your total
And it would make it
convincibility.
easier to convince the
Exactly,
village.
because they already have a problem, and you're just using that problem for your lie. You know?
What if we also add certain challenges as we progress through the game? Do you want this game to have? So I see this game having. It could either have some humor or no humor at all, and like you play it very seriously, like you're trying to convince all these people.
I could see it that maybe the liar that you play as has like a sarcastic sense of humor where they make jokes and stuff, but the villagers can't tell that he's
Yeah.
being sarcastic because to them this is all real, and you
Yeah,
are a real hero that's come to slay the monster that they have an issue with. That doesn't exist.
The only reason I bring this up is I thought of maybe later in the game there would be challenges such as a neighborhood knight or sheriff wanting to join you in the hunt for the monster. So then you have to convince him to stay or send him off in a different path or craft more materials to get him off your path. And then eventually I could see it being where the final boss, if you want to take this twist, is a village requests you back because they actually have that monster that you faked.
Interesting.
So you would have to maybe, and I don't want the gameplay to change at all in the last chapter, but I could see you maybe crafting a bigger monster to scare this monster away from the village.
I like that twist. The only issue is I think in this universe there really are just no monsters. It's Earth. Like there's nothing.
It's just like a normal. There's like a Honda Civic driving by. No,
but you know
I see
I
what you mean. Like that maybe. So there's just animals and accentuated animals into monsters. Just and that's basically what it is. Fears turn into monsters if you have too much ignorance.
Exactly. Like I kind of want the lore of this universe to be that this guild of heroes have existed since the beginning of time, and they've saved the world countless times from multiple threats. Maybe the big twist at the end is you create like a not country, but like continent wide problem. Like you come up with this ultimate lie to make it look like the whole world is in danger. So you create like a world threatening monster, and you have to convince everybody that this monster exists. And then you have to go out and defeat it and become the savior of the world. You know what I mean? So maybe that's what the ending, that last mission is to convince everyone.
I know you're not trying to do this, but at the current times as they are, why don't you just make the flu? Right?
Like the Black Plague or something like that?
Yeah, or like smallpox.
I mean, that's true.
But you'd have to sell it to the people.
Yeah, but like I was thinking more like White Walkers from Game of Thrones. You know what I mean? Or like the Death March or whatever it's called from The Witcher. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah. I think that's what they're called. So
like
so that they're gonna parade through a whole continent. So you'd have to like burn a village down,
right?
With nobody in it.
That's
like to convince. Yeah.
Something like that, where it's like there's this giant, maybe like a giant army of zombies that are about to come in from this gate, and we need to protect everyone, type of thing. And then that's when like other people from your guild, maybe you could also like use them in your plan and be like, this is the team we've assembled to fight off. We took the best of the best in the Liars Guild. They're not, they won't call themselves the Liars Guild. You know what I mean? But the best
call themselves
heroes
the Guild
of
Heroes.
Yeah. And I think that's how it'll end. But to get basic gameplay down, I think, the first part of the game is all set up. You're just building a scene late at night to try to convince whatever village you visited that this monster is a problem for them now. Mm-hmm. And once you've convinced them, maybe the gameplay from there on out would be you have to leave for a couple of days, and then maybe you could decide how much maybe it's like not sliders, but like costumes that you could wear, and each one's like it looks like you were really beat up, or it looks like you're whatever, or it looks like you didn't even have any trouble at all. Like you could decide how you look, like how you present yourself, and then you could also choose like certain things. But then from there on, it's like storytelling, I guess, where you have to like tell the maybe it'll be like three choices that you could choose from for the next
And you have
part
to
of
like
the story.
sell it.
Yeah, and then you got to sell it, and then depending on how well you sell it, the villagers will pay you a certain amount, and then you can take that back to the guild and see how close you are to the next monster unlock or next monster pack to unlock to get new crafting materials and maybe new dialogue options to sell monsters better.
Like a better speech or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
Did you want there to... What about having a recurring cast of characters? So like you have different members of your guild that you invite to help you do these scenes. So it distracts from local law enforcement and less people want to help you.
Yeah, I think maybe there are characters with their own personalities. Like they are NPCs that are like, they have their own voice, their own personalities and stuff. And maybe you could hire them to help you out doing different
like allies with maybe different perks or different strengths.
Like this one's really good at making the crowd really nervous, or this one's really good at winning people over, and you could choose to bring one or two people along, and then like I said, for the final mission maybe you could bring all of them and then use all their different perks and skills to convince.
Like one of them's very good at pretending to be a villager to curry favor.
Exactly, stuff like that.
All right.
So yeah, pretty much 2 phases. Convince that then the monster's real. Then after that, it's just a bunch of dialogue trees and choices to try and sell your fight as best as you can. I think it's going to have to be somewhat linear with very slightly different ways that each story ends, because I don't want there to be like a failed convince. If you fail, it's going to be like game over. Like you can't fail and then just continue on. You know what I mean? It's going to be kind of like how Danganronpa or Persona works. Like you can make choices and it might change in the end a little bit. But if you fail and the game's over, and then you have to start back from a certain point. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Basically what failure means to the player is that the guild is found out and that their life is ruined.
Exactly.
They're going to be hanged.
So if you don't,
it always ends in death.
If you fail to convince them, you could choose like maybe to start trying to make the scene better, or you could go back to the very, very beginning and change the monster altogether. Like maybe you don't have the right amount of crafting materials and places you could put things to convince the village.
Or maybe you could have different allies that help you and that aid you in convincing the village.
And now that I'm saying that, maybe trying to convince the village is going to be even more linear than I thought, where you have all these crafting materials and maybe we give the player like a set amount of materials already that they put. Do you want there to be a gathering portion of the game where you go and get stuff? Or maybe you could just start off with all these things and then you'll just place them where you want to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's hard to say. I don't think I'd want you to have the stuff already. Maybe have like some kind of like suitcase where you have a bunch of different props and supplies that you can then combine.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's better. And then,
how about this? In each level or village, there will be local fauna and local items where it's like, this is what we gathered so far. And then you have to use whatever's local to create a monster or to create, to add flourishes.
Or it could also be kind of like trial and error type of thing where at this village, they have a fire pit. You could choose to put a prop in the fire pit or not. And then like, if you do, it gives you a bonus if you put the right thing in there. You know what I mean? Like the right prop.
Yeah.
Like what if you, instead of putting...
That would act with it.
Yeah. Like instead of putting blood there, you could put the burnt hide of an animal to make it look like a human was burned there.
Or
you know what I mean?
gunpowder to create maybe dragon breath.
Yeah, so like you have multiple tools and you can place them in specific areas, but bonuses will proc depending on if you put the right items in the right spots. So essentially there is, if you follow a guide, you'll get 100% persuasion, 100% everything, but if you don't use a guide, you'll get various results.
Gotcha. Yeah, makes sense.
Cool. What sounds are we hearing during this whole thing? I want it
to be. Oh, whoops.
No, you go for it.
I imagine it. I don't know. When you're sneaking and stealthing about and setting up, I almost want it to be like Luigi's Mansion soundtrack.
I think I had the similar idea where I want to say I kind of want it to be like, so the typical instruments that you would hear during the era, so like lutes, harps, flutes, stuff like that. But
wind and string instruments.
Yeah, but like the kind of the feel of the music is like elevator music using those instruments, where it's just very like chill, vibing music, but using more medieval instruments, so it sounds a little bit different. So I guess like kind of like classical music, kind of like jazz mixed into one, using lutes and harps and flutes and stuff.
Yeah, very just low tempo music.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I see where you're going with this.
Doo-doo.
I said I see where you're going, and she thought it was Siri.
How much are you willing to pay?
It depends on how it looks. So what do we see it looking like? Is this a fully fledged 3D rendered game, or are we doing 2D art styles, hand drawn?
I say full 3D models and graphics, but maybe the art style is closer to like a maybe it could be kind of like a cell shaded art style. I want to say like a 3D shell shaded game.
All right. And if it's 3D art or cell shaded, are we customizing our own character here? So
no, I think they're all going to be like set characters that you meet, and they all have their own personalities and story beats.
What does
stuff.
the main character look like? What am I going to look like?
I'm thinking we can go two ways with this. He's like a scrawny looking, pretty attractive guy, or like a big brawny guy, and that's what all the Thieves Guild or the Liars Guild looks like, because they're trying to pretend that they're heroes, right?
Oh, I see. So you want him to look like the classic knight in shining armor
exactly.
build.
So I think
with the big chest, big shoulders, big arms.
Right. So I think that's probably where we're gonna have to go. Where, yeah, they're all gonna look kind of like you said, the classic knight in shining armor look, where they're just like big, brawny, and like good looking and dashing or whatever. And that's kind of what they all look like, but they'll all have different personalities to them.
I see. Okay. All right. That gives me more of a feel for what they're going to look like.
But for me, at first, when I thought this was going to be more of like an open world, gather materials, craft, and put, I thought that at that point, I was like, oh, this is going to have to be a full $60 game. But like, since we made it a little bit more linear, where you have all these items, you just have to choose where to put them. And it's like a linear story, and you kind of know what's going to happen. Now I'm more geared towards like a $40 title.
$40 sounds about right to me. $39.99. I think with the graphics we have, it feels like a cookie game that could. Yeah, I see it being right there. It's that trigger point where you're like, I'll take a chance.
Yeah, sweet. All right, Alex. Well, it's time to start your timer, because it's time to name this game.
All right. You ready? Because
Yes,
here
sir.
we go.
Now,
Zero's Guild.
Zero's Guild. I thought I was going super simple and self-explanatory and just call it the Liars Guild.
Either of those work. Which one do we want?
We'll just call it Liars Guild.
All right, at 13 seconds and 33 milliseconds.
Sweet.
The Liars Guild. This is a game where you combine different regions while also persuading villages that your guild is actually a guild of heroes and that you defeat monsters, when in reality, you guys are all just a big, fat phonies and liars. And you must create these monsters and scare these villagers so that they believe that they need you and that the country needs you and that eventually the world needs you in the Liars Guild.
All right, we have a complete game. What game studio would you assign to make the Liars Guild or Liars Guild the best?
With this one, I'd say Double Fine.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they throw a, like, this would be like a weird world, like warped world where it's like, I could see this happening.
Yeah, I see this kind of like whoever made the Psychonauts, the team at Double Fine that made Psychonauts would do great with this. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go an interesting route, and it doesn't follow their normal type of thing, but since Telltale doesn't exist anymore and they got rebought and rebranded by a new Telltale, maybe they also want to venture out and make new types of games, you know what I mean? So instead of doing a linear evolution of a point and click adventure game, which is more like an adventure story decision based game, they decide to make more gameplay in their games, and they go with Liars Guild. You know what I mean? Because it's still kind of linear.
It's like a slide. It's like a lateral move that you could see them doing if it was like an IP that was very interactive.
Yeah, it's a more interactive version of the classic Telltale style of game. Another good person I think that would do all right with this is Square or Spike Chunsoft.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
It changed it completely, being now Japanese, but they all, Danganronpa and those type of games, it's already kind of like this where it's more linear, trying to tell a story with a sense of humor, but also a sense of seriousness mixed in.
And for me, I'll just shoot off the bow. Square Enix,
just in general.
Just because if they make the Kingdom Hearts team in specific, because we're actually giving them a story that makes sense with a bunch of flash and stuff. So I could see them making this game look super cool. And also the story makes enough sense with enough glitz and glamour that it would be able to be pulled off. Because I think this would be a truly Japanese kind of anime. I could see it going that way.
Right. I also can see it more in the Japanese style of story, but it's also, more firmly based in Western ideas in terms of like the medieval Europe, high fantasy, but not really high fantasy in this particular game. But
it kind of feels like a fusion to me, where it's like medieval Europe, high fantasy, but it's a guild of liars who put on monsters, you know?
Yeah.
And they all have like personalities and specialties.
I think if we were to give this to Square Enix or Spike Chunsoft, the monsters aren't going to be like goblins and dragons. It's going to be like weird, like the Persona monster.
Like a succubus or something.
Like a guy sitting on a toilet. Like,
with a knight's helmet on.
Yeah, just a giant dick for some reason, But yeah, I think all those would be good choices. And with that, our 102nd IP has gone gold. We hope you look forward to this experience that will probably never release. You could write to @poundgames@gmail.com if you have anything to patch into the game recreated today. Also, give us feedback if we're still learning how to make the show better, and your feedback really helps. We have a Patreon. If you like to back our ideas, please head over to I can't read today. Patreon.com/wearenotgamedevs. Patrons receive episodes 2 days early and an extra podcast at the beginning, which caught the tail end of our conversation at the beginning of this episode. That's patreon.com/wearenotgamedevs. If you like our show, why not subscribe and give us all the stars on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. We're on Spotify and SoundCloud, and now YouTube too. And if they ask for a review, instead of reviewing our show, become your inner game critic and review Liars Guild, the video game we just created. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back next Friday with another new IP. Again, my name's J.E.
And I'm Alex Gonzalez.
Thank you. And please remember that we are not game devs. I just thought of something. We haven't done this in a while, but we could totally do special event convincings of monsters. I don't know. There's probably a better word.
Oh, like the Headless Horseman?
Yeah,
or
Headless
it would
Horseman.
be a really hilarious DLC where you convince a village that instead of scaring them, that Santa exists.
Yeah, Santa Claus, stuff like that.
What
you know
are we doing?
The Easter Bunny, stuff like that.
They start leaving eggs everywhere. That'd be funny too.
Yeah, and it'll just be
what
like,
the hell's going on?
a special set of things that you could use to convince the villagers. You know, like for Christmas, we'll give you like jingle bells, which are like, this is what you have to. You give them the villagers the jingle bells, but like, you have to shake these, so Santa Claus will stay away from your village or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or come in. Who knows?
So Santa Claus can hear your summons.
Exactly.